a 1920s bungalow that we're going to measure today. I'll show you how I do it, and I'll show you some of the equipment that I use. First of all, start with a nice big tape measure. This is a 100-foot tape measure. The reason I use such a long one is because there are some big houses out there. I was at a house the other day. It was a very simple Rambler, but it was 70 feet all the way across the front. So get yourself a 100-foot tape measure. It has a hook on the end that will let you hook it onto the side of the house, so you can do this by yourself. I also have a 30-foot tape measure. The one that I like is the Fat Max, but you don't have to get this brand, but I like it because it's got a wide blade. And the reason I like that is it doesn't collapse when you extend it out a long way. I can generally get this to go out about 12 feet before it breaks like that. So the thick tape measure is a good idea for you. I also have a clipboard with me. And my clipboard, I use plastic. It's much lighter than metal, and it doesn't get as cold as metal in the winter, because you will be measuring in the winter also. I've got graph paper on it. I use graph paper because it helps me kind of line things up and make sure I'm measuring things correctly. My graph paper is marked off in 10 squares per large square. So if the house is 20 feet across, I can just go quickly 10, 20, and I'm done. I don't have to add. Most graph paper comes in 8 squares, so make sure you look for the 10 squares. I also have a pen with 4 different colors. Again, if you're measuring in the winter, you might want to have a pencil with you because the pen will freeze. I use different colors for different floors, so when I'm walking around the house, I pay attention to where, like a bay window if it's just on the main floor, or if there's a balcony on the second floor, I take a look at that. And I draw the whole main floor in one color, upstairs in another color, basement in another color, and then exterior things like decks and porches in another color. It helps keep it organized. Also, my clipboard opens. Inside I have a couple of basic things. Flashlights for vacant rooms. I have a laser measure that I can use inside, though I don't tend to use it very often. I have a report cover. This is a simple report cover like you had in grade school to keep your papers in. So in the rain, you can just slide this over here, keep your paper dry, and lift it up to access the paper underneath. Okay? Because as soon as your paper gets wet, the pen won't write on it anymore. I also, in rain and in snow, I wear a big coat with a huge hood to keep everything dry. The last thing I have in here, I'll show you how to use it later. It's just a piece of metal, and you can get a screwdriver or something like that, but sometimes you can't get up close to the house because there are too many bushes or too steep a hill, and you can stick this in the ground and measure on the ground level instead of getting up close to the house. I was at a house yesterday, tucked under garage, so the ground actually dropped off and I couldn't get to the edge of the house, so I used that for that. Okay, so those are the basic tools. I'm going to start now measuring this house, and I usually start at the front corner. If the house has an attached garage, I start at the garage. It's just a system that I have. You work out whatever system works for you, so you make sure you don't miss anything. You can see right away this house has an issue. This is decorative. I don't want to measure that because I'm going to make the house get too big. So I'm going to take a look at this. I can go ahead and measure. Normal way, I hook the tape measure on the end, just run it across. Alright, so I just measured across, and it's just under 8 feet. But what I need to take a look at is how much of it was this decorative stuff. So, I will measure from here to here, and that's just over a foot. So I need to subtract a little bit over a foot. So my distance here is actually 7 feet. So then I will write down 7 feet driving across here. Alright? Then I move up here, and I'm going to get this measurement. And that's about 4.5 feet. So I will draw on my sketch 4.5 feet coming out. And I will make a note that says main only, to know that that's the main floor only. And I'll draw my little door there so I know that there's a door there. When I draw my sketch, it helps me to know where doors are, where stairs are, so I can place the rooms a little bit better. Okay. Now, this next section is going to be a little bit hard to measure. So, I'm going to pull out this. I'm going to step out in front of the house a little bit to see what's going on. I'm going to go across the front of the house right now, and a couple of things are going on here. We still have some of those decorative features coming down. So I took a peek, and this one lines up with the gutter, so I know I can start with the gutter on this one. Because the bush is here, it makes it a little bit hard to hook the tape measure onto the side of the house. So I'm going to be using this thing now. And all you do is stick it into the hole at the end of the tape measure and stick it into the grass. I'm lining it up right with that gutter because again that part is decorative. And then I'm just going to go back here and line it up with that area right there. And I can see it's about 8.5 feet. All right, we've done the whole front of the house. I'm going to go down the side now. And sometimes you have to figure out which direction is best to start from. I've got the decorative place over here on this end, so it's a little bit tough. The other end has a gutter. It's hard to hook your tape measure sometimes on a house with a gutter attached to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk to the other end. There's a nice fence down there. I'm going to hook my tape measure on the fence and be able to measure that way. So sometimes you just have to start at the opposite end. As I walk along, I also look up and look down to see what the basement's doing and what upstairs is doing to see if there's anything I should note up there. I've held this straight out. I can pull it behind the decorative area here, and I know that's 30 feet right there. Okay? So sometimes you just got to find the best thing to hook things on. Now I'm at the back of the house. You might think you already measured the front. Why do you need to measure the back? But there might be jut outs. There might be overhangs. Also, it's a way of double checking. I always do all 4 sides, and I make sure that the front measurement matches the back measurement and the left side matches the right side before I leave the house to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. So I'm just going to pull this across the back now. Just hook the hook on there, and if you keep a little tension on the tape measure, it will stay on even for the full 70 feet if we have a big house. 22 feet. Now we're inside going to do some of the room dimensions to put into the MLS listing. This is a pretty basic square room. A couple of different ways you can measure it. First of all, this is insulation. This is a vacant home. That's how they insulate their sliding glass door. I use my basic tape measure and just run it across the floor and cover the edge of the wall right here. This is 9 foot 3 inches. Remember, when you're doing inside measurements, the people here are wondering where their furniture is going to fit. So it goes from inside wall to inside wall. You could also use a laser pointer. Laser beam. I don't tend to use this as often because you can get errors with this. If there's stuff hanging on the walls, shelves or something like that, you can make a mistake. If there's a mirror there, it will reflect off of it. Sometimes there's things hanging from the ceiling that it reflects off of and messes you up. But that's very quick. This says 9 feet 5 inches, so it's very, very close. So either way works. Keep in mind when you're doing inside, as I said, people want to know where their furniture goes. So if there's a big closet that juts into the room, back out that closet and just measure up to the edge of the closet, not including the closet because their furniture is not going to go in there. Okay? And then you'd measure the opposite direction also to get both measurements. MLS does allow you to put in decimal points. So this was 9 feet 5 inches or 9 feet 3 inches, depending on which measurement you use. I can put in 9.5 in MLS for my room dimensions. I don't have to go with 9 or round up to 10. I can put in 9.5. We're going to measure the kitchen now to get the room dimensions of it. Now, there's no hard and fast rules in MLS about how you do your measurements for inside. So every time I teach a class and I talk to people, I double check and make sure. And the consensus that everybody goes with is in the kitchen, you measure wall to wall. So in a case like this, even with the cabinetry there, I'll measure all the way to the wall, back to this wall right here, and get my full measurement. So that's 7.5 feet. Now, if this were in a living room and those were built-ins that couldn't be removed, I would generally measure only to the built-in, because back to the theory that that's where people put their furniture. And in living rooms and family rooms, they're looking more for furniture, when in kitchen they're looking for the overall dimensions. So 2 different ways to do these, but that's how it's usually done in the kitchen, all the way to the wall, and usually in other rooms with built-ins just to the built-in. We're now upstairs in the 1.5 story, and I'm still working on getting the overall square footage of the house. Right now I'm not concerned about how big this room is, but still how big the whole second floor is to get the above ground finished square footage of the house. Now, the rule is that you have to have a ceiling height of at least 7 feet high. This is 7 feet high in the middle, so that's fine. But also you can only count ceiling height to where it goes to the 5 foot level. So I can't just measure straight across in here and say that is the distance of this second floor. I have to start from where the ceiling height meets 5 feet. So what I do in a case like this, pull out my tape measure. It's 5 feet right there. Drop my tape measure straight down. Make a note of that on the floor. I would do the same thing on the other side and then measure from that spot to this spot and come up with a measurement there. So even though measuring wall to wall in here would be about 10 feet wide, my actual measurement that I'm allowed to put in for finished square footage is 8 feet wide because of the ceiling height. Now I don't need to measure front to back because I already know from the outside measurements from downstairs that it's 30 feet front to back, and I knew when I was outside looking that this makes up the whole distance of that. So for the outside measurements, this is going to be 30 feet by 8, not 30 feet by 10. I'm not going all the way wall to wall. It's where it hits the 5-foot mark. So I don't have neat handwriting, but this is the sketch that I did. As I mentioned, I used red as we went around the outside. Red is my main floor as I went around. I used black for the exteriors, exterior facilities. So this is the deck in black. Then I used blue for upstairs. So my upstairs, remember, that was just 8 feet wide from where it's 5 feet to 5 feet in the ceiling. And then I write in the rooms. The rooms in red are on the main floor, the rooms in blue are upstairs, and the rooms in green are downstairs. That's just my method, but it helps me keep things organized, helps me figure out where things line up with each other in the house. So I know if there's a jut out for the master bath, I have that in the right spot and it makes sense to me. So just to summarize what we did today, we started outside to get the overall measurements of the house. I measure the exterior of the house, and that gets me the above ground finished square footage. And then when I go into the basement, I know the size of the basement because I measured the outside of the house. I can figure out what's finished down there, add that together with the above ground finished square footage, and that gives us the total finished square footage. Then we went inside and measured the rooms. And again, each room is going to be measured slightly differently, depending on if there are closets jutting into it, what the ceiling height is, and if there are built-ins in it. After you're finished, you end up with a sketch, and when you go back to your office, you can do the math, add up the square footage, figure it out. I also would have measured the garage. You don't have to have that, but it is a new field in MLS now, so you can add in garage measurements. There's no need to measure the lot size because that's gotten off of tax records. So just remember to start from the outside, pay attention, look up, look down, see what the second floor is doing, what the basement is doing, if there are overhangs, to get your overall square footage. And draw a nice, neat graph, measure all 4 sides, and then you'll be able to do the math when you get home. And that's it.